Hello and welcome to another episode of Geek-men and the Masters of the Thunder Nerds. I'm Dustin, and I have a very special guest with me today, and I will do that as soon as I can figure out where the button is. And all right, we have with us today AudraKate Gonzalez. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, hanging in there. So, what's new? I mean, I heard you. We were talking before the show, and you apparently had watched the Marvels,
Yes,
and apparently you liked it, huh?
I did. It was good. It was very
Okay.
good. I thought um probably not everybody's cup of tea because, Marvel's definitely ruined a couple things recently. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun movie, like fun family movie, and I really like Kamala Khan as a character
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
the
she
movie,
seems really
not the show. Her show's terrible.
good. Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I that should tell you exactly what I think about all that stuff. I just haven't got around to it. I haven't even watched Loki. I haven't watched the second season of Loki yet.
It was
Um,
good.
yeah, so I've
Nice.
heard. Our one longtime fan that in here. Oh, there she is. Uh, she says she wishes they cast someone other than Brie Larson. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yes. She's not everyone's favorite. I don't
I,
blame them.
I mean, she was like talking so much trash, like behind the scenes to other people, and it's just like
Mhm.
you are so obnoxious. Like it clips to other people that are just talking nice things about other people and not sarcastic, not anything, not snarky. And she's over there being snarky, sarcastic, and it's just like, okay,
Yeah. I agree. I definitely think and I think this is the part of the Marvel curse, if you will, that
mm,
like you get cast in a Marvel movie and you either accept it humbly
mm,
or and become that character like so many of I think so many of the Marvel characters have done. Like Tom Holland is Spider-Man, and you
yeah,
can't tell me differently. And Chris Hemsworth is Thor, and you can't tell me any differently. Whereas she kind of, I feel like, she got the role, and then it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't think she loves Marvel. I don't think she loves the
mm-hmm,
universe, and I think you can kind of tell that
mm-hmm,
just by the way she talks and like in her interviews and stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it comes a time where you have to separate the art from the artist and either watch it or don't. And either
Mm-hmm.
way, it is what it is, and it's everyone's decision when it comes down to it, I
As
suppose.
it is, I don't even know what's gonna go on with it anyways, because like I think they're trashing the whole Kang dynasty. So
Yeah, that's definitely up in the air, but I've heard conflicting rumors that they're they might go, they might not go, and I don't know. It just I can't see Jonathan Majors leading a movie,
no, and like
especially after like
my
what he
yeah, and like things that I heard, and I know you didn't watch Loki, so I'm not gonna spoil anything or say anything. Um, but what I did learn was that there was originally a different ending that was
mm,
written for Loki, and so part of me is like, did they redo the ending because they needed to fix it so that way they can potentially start something else without Kang?
mm-hmm.
Like move on to the Doctor Doom,
Yeah,
you know, universe, multiverse, or whatever,
mm-hmm.
and not need Kang anymore? It's possible. I mean,
Yeah,
Kang started with Loki, make it end at Loki, possibly.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they need to introduce the Fantastic Four first before they
Mm-hmm.
do anything. And I don't know. I just hope it's good. I didn't find the last one very good.
No.
I didn't even watch it. I've just seen the trailers and I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm not watching
Last
it.
I heard, they're only going to have one Marvel project coming out next year. So then that way they can go back to, like, I think the drawing board and figure out what they're going to do to make it better, to fix what's broken.
Yeah, it feels broken.
Yeah, it feels disjointed.
But at the same time, it's like, is it broken or is it just superhero fatigue that people say? It's just like, is it broken or are we just not appreciating it anymore?
I think the thing is people are still, and I think this is where people need to drop it. People are still holding Endgame up to this high tier level, and I think because of that, they think that every movie after Endgame has to meet that level, and it's like, you're not gonna get that. I'm sorry. Not every Marvel movie is going to be this 3-hour Marvel movie with every single superhero that you can think of on screen.
Right.
So I think you have to erase that expectation. And I think what people are forgetting is not every Marvel movie, leading up to Endgame was good or was perfect. And I think people are forgetting that. Like, Thor Dark World was not good. Guardians 2 was not good. Captain Marvel was just kind of meh. So I think people are forgetting that as well.
Well, and I mean, this happened with even before the first Avengers. I mean, they had a Hulk that wasn't the Hulk. They had to switch actors and stuff like that. So it's like they're introducing a new actor in that role. And what was it, Iron Man 2 that had been out? It wasn't. I mean, they had that whole debacle with what's his face? The ring guy.
Mandarin,
thank you.
Yep.
It's just like the way they executed that was so. Oh, that was Iron Man 3.
Yes.
That was so abysmal. That could have been
totally
so
agree.
good. That could have been so good, especially because they had like a gritty looking like dude that it was very reminiscent of the Joker in The Dark Knight. And it felt very much like that. Like they could bring it, modernize it, and do that. And it's just like, nope.
They turned it into this hokey.
Yeah, they just tanked it.
Yeah. Because I think the problem that Marvel is facing is, especially with this new phase of heroes and everything, is they're trying to do so much, especially with the multiverse right now.
Yeah.
I don't even know how they can keep track of it all because it's just like all over the place. And I think once you add in the shows, it makes it even more all over the place.
Yeah.
To where, like, even though with the like first few movies, like before Endgame and everything like that, and you kind of knew the superheroes were all going to connect and intertwine at some point, especially with Avengers. Even that still felt like I could follow and I could understand. Whereas like right now, I think some people aren't enjoying it because it is hard to follow.
Right.
Like it's like, wait, what all do I have to watch in order to know what's going on?
Right.
And it's like, ooh,
yeah,
you're gonna have to watch a lot. You got a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah, right.
Because not only do you have movies, now you have the shows to catch up on too, if you want to be able to follow anything. And I think they're just trying to do too much.
Okay, so we have a question here that I think would be good. First of all, yep, I'm not a fan of the Fantastic Four movies either, but yes. Movies need a grain of mystery. When you try to explain everything, you lose the plot. Yeah, I get that.
It's the same thing with books too. You gotta have some type of like element of surprise or, mystery in there in order for the reader or watcher to feel like they've accomplished something while they're watching or reading.
Yeah.
You know, it gives you that sense of like, ooh, yes.
Right. I've heard rumors the plan is to use Secret Wars and Deadpool to collapse and close the multiverse in the fold of X-Men to explain where all the mutants have been and such. Yes, I have heard that as well, and I'm honestly excited for Secret Wars. And there's a lot of power in your fan base theorizing certain aspects. Yeah. But okay, so this is supposed to be a horror thing.
Sorry,
And we're
tangent.
off talking about other comics and stuff like that. So, you are a horror author.
Yes.
And that's, you pretty much got started. I know I've published your work in Aphotic Realm back in the day when we had that. Well, we still have that, but
A little baby.
yeah, and which is also a very good story. But yeah, so tell us about your first book, Tomato Juice.
Yeah, so Tomato Juice is the first book in my young adult horror series. And the series is called This Is Noir. And it's basically, Noir is a fictional city. The idea is Noir exists everywhere. Every state has a Noir, just like Freddie, says that every town has an Elm Street. Every state has a Noir, and weird stuff happens there. So in the first book, Tomato Juice, takes place in Indiana, and it follows 14-year-old Dean. He's estranged from his grandma. Grandpa's passed away, and he was really close to his grandpa, which is kind of why he's like kind of estranged with his grandma, because after he passed away, grandma just dropped off the face of the earth for a while, a good portion of Dean's life. And now Dean has to go and stay on his grandma's tomato farm with her for the summer. His parents are separated, so mom, needs a place for him to be for the summer while she's working.
Right.
So he goes to stay with grandma, and weird stuff is happening, and it just keeps getting weirder. And Dean starts, putting two and two together. He starts deep diving into things, and into the occult and like witchcraft and stuff like that. And it turns out that Gran has sold her soul. Basically, the reason being, because Grandpa had the tomato farm. He was the one who started the tomato farm. When he passed away, it was hard to keep the tomato farm running. And the tomato farm is kind of, Gran's connection to him. Like, she can't lose that connection to Grandpa. So, to Paps. And so, after exhausting all resources, the last thing that she can think of to do is just sell her soul. So that's what she does. And now Dean is 14. He's got to figure out how to do an exorcism and all that fun stuff that you don't really think you're going to do when you're 14, but he does it anyways.
Yeah. So what was your inspiration when you're writing that book?
Well, a couple different things happened around the same time for Tomato Juice to be born.
Yeah.
So my
it's hard to quantify that answer, right?
Exactly. It is hard because it's not just like one little thing. It's kind of just like a multitude of little things that come together that makes it possible. Yeah. So my grandma passed away in 2020, and I noticed how like people just really dwell on death, and it ends up it comes to a point where you forget to focus on like the people who are still here, the people who that person's legacy is still living through those people. So as long as you're staying connected and really spending time with each other, like you're not going to lose that connection to that person. And I think a lot of people forget that. And so it was one of those things that I noticed with my family was like, guys, we are dwelling on this too much, and she wouldn't, my grandma wouldn't want us to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like a cathartic idea to write a story about, family legacies and how they still continue to live on and things like that. And you don't have to continually dwell on them. And so that was just like, that was starting in the back of my mind. Like, okay, I'm going to do this for my family. It's going to be for me to get it out of my system, but it's also going to be for my family. It's going to be for my grandpa. And then one day I was watching an episode of Seinfeld, because that's one of my all-time favorite shows. And it's the episode with Kenny Rogers' chicken that like moves in across the street, and there's like this blinding red light, and it's seeping into Kramer's apartment, and he's just like, he can't see like anything anymore. And he goes into Jerry's apartment and he pours a bowl of cereal. And when he goes to get the milk, to pour the milk into the cereal, he grabs the tomato juice instead and pours the tomato juice into the cereal, and then takes a big old bite and was like, freaks out and like tells Jerry, he's like, that looked like milk to me. And I watched that, and like all of a sudden, just randomly, my mind was like, okay, but what if there was like creepy tomato juice that you didn't know was made out of somebody else? Okay.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's kind of like the wheels started turning with the tomato juice idea, and I jumbled it together.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that's always the case.
It actually started as a short story for English composition class for college. And my professor was like, it was like a 20-page story, and he was like, hey, you should really, turn this into something longer, like an actual, novel, and see what happens. I was like, okay. So I did it. It took 2 years.
Yeah. I have stuff in my desk drawer that I haven't explored since before the hospital and all that stuff, and it's just like, somewhere in the back of my mind, it's like, I know I have an idea in there that I should probably do, but I haven't. It's just I haven't got around.
And there's always going to be more ideas too.
Yeah.
I'll be in the middle of like working on something, like neck deep in the middle of working on something, and then all of a sudden it'll be like, hey, instead of writing this, can you just put this away and go write this? I'm like,
right. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll get right on that.
Right, exactly.
So we have a comment. What is your favorite episode of Seinfeld, and why is it the dealership?
Okay, funnily enough, it is not the dealership. My favorite episode of Seinfeld is, I feel like, a controversial one, because not many people actually, there's like, it's like split. Some people like it, and some people will tell you it's the most boring episode of Seinfeld. And I'm the person that's like, it's my favorite. I love the parking garage episode. I love it.
Okay.
They're stuck in a parking garage.
Is that the one when he's carrying the huge box?
Yes. And my favorite fun fact, and maybe this is why it's my favorite episode, my favorite fun fact is that he was actually carrying around an air conditioner, like a legitimate, like actually carrying it around because he wanted it to look legit.
Right.
And I just think that is so fun, and that's why it's my favorite episode. It's weird. It's not everyone's favorite. Some people are like, it's so boring, and I'm like, yeah, I think it's hilarious.
It's a good episode. It's definitely up there. That one's probably my favorite, and I also like the Soup Nazi episode.
That one is also good. I got to go to New York with Kevin, my husband, for the first time with him this past March, and we actually got to like walk by it's closed down now. It has been for years, but the actual like Soup Nazi kitchen that was in the show was inspired by it, so that was fun.
That's funny. I dig that. Okay, but so you have written other things, and you have a second novel in that series.
Yes.
Alligator Skin,
yes.
Yeah.
I personally love alligator skin because um it's almost everything I enjoy in a horror story. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got monster like cryptids, um, and it's got some paranormal in there. It's got some like Scooby Doo vibes and very coming of age. Set in the 80s, so a lot of 80s references.
Perfection.
Right. Pretty in Pink gets referenced a lot because that's like one of my 80s favorite movies ever. So that one gets referenced a lot, and obviously because it gets referenced a lot, Molly Ringwald gets referenced a lot in the book. But yeah, I love alligator skin.
Yeah.
So
That's one I actually haven't read yet. I know I read Tomato Juice, but I haven't got around to reading Alligator Skin yet. And I'm definitely going to have to pick that up because we were totally going to come to the light show
yes,
that you were recently at.
yes,
And my kids were going to dress up and all that stuff, but we
life
couldn't.
happens.
It was
Life
life happens and we couldn't make it, and it's such a bummer because she right now loves Goosebumps, and I know you are a huge fan of Goosebumps, and you just met R.L. Stein recently.
Yes.
What was that like?
The highlight of my life. I say it is my favorite day ever, just behind the day I got married.
Right.
So, but yeah, it was a dream. Like, oh my gosh, I don't think, and like I've met like the weekend before I met R.L. Stein. I met Nico Hughes from Pet Cemetery.
Oh, you're right.
And like that was exciting.
Yeah.
I got him to sign my copy of Pet Cemetery. That was cool. But like literally waiting in line to meet R.L. Stein, my heart was racing. It was so cool because he's the most down to earth person. I think, like, you think of this guy, he's been doing this for years. He's inspired so many people, and like he's had so much happen this year alone in terms of like the Goosebumps TV show that just started streaming back in October, and then he's had like 4 books published this year. Like a lot has happened for him this year, and he's just so down to earth. He's just so sweet, and he came out because the event wasn't supposed to start until 11, and he came out at 10:30 to come and just see the people that came to meet him.
No kidding.
Like just see the line. And he came outside and was like waving to everyone and saying hi to everyone, doing like a quick little photo op for people. And like you could tell he was so moved by the amount of people that showed up to this event. Yeah. I don't know if you're aware, but he is from Columbus, Ohio. Mm-hmm. So he's from Bexley, which is where the event was at. It was at a bookstore in Bexley. And I don't think the bookstore, I think they anticipated a lot of people, but I don't think they actually anticipated the amount of people. Like right. This place, it was blocks and blocks and blocks the line went on. Wow. And it was insane. Like so many people showed up, and you could just tell he was just so moved by the amount of people that came. Yeah. And I got in line to meet him, and I actually got to give him a copy of Alligator Skin, and I got the chance to like tell him like how much of an impact that he's had on my life, and just like my decision to become a writer, and my decision to go to school and become a writer and get a master's. And like you could just tell like it, like I don't know, you could tell he was just so excited with what everyone was saying, about just the impact he's had on their lives. Yeah. And it was just so cool. To be honest, I don't even like my hands were shaking, my legs were shaking, and we left the store. My mom was like, she was so busy taking pictures of me meeting him. And she was like, so what did you say to him? I didn't really get to tell what you were all saying. And I was like, Mom, I
I
don't even
don't
remember exactly, to be
right.
honest. Like, it's all a blur. I know
Yeah.
I met him and I know I said some stuff.
Yeah. And
My
pictures were
main
taken of it.
Right, my main goal, literally, while we were standing in line was because mind you, I'm surrounded by like children.
Uh-huh.
Okay, like there was some adults there, but it was a lot of children were there, and I'm surrounded by these little children, and the whole time I'm just like, all right, Audra, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, because if you cry, these kids are gonna be like, this chick is insane. Why is she crying? So yeah, that was
Yeah,
basically
I totally get that. I I mean, I've met some of my heroes, and it's just like, I just choke, and it's just like, yeah, shake your hand, nice to meet you.
right.
It's just like
Yeah.
so generic.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no. I did say I met Mark Lowry,
Okay.
and I had Bubba teeth in that were all like gnarly, and I shook his hand. He's just like, oh, how nice. It's just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Forget that. Sorry.
And took those out and was just like, oh, hey. But
Right.
again, it was generic. So that's awesome. And he said, you answered my question. Happy you got to meet a hero. That's amazing. It is. And my mom said, what a privilege to meet R.L. Stine.
Yes,
And that's
absolutely.
and that's what I wanted to have for my kids. Like, I wanted to take my kids to meet you, this famous author, and get the books and stuff like that, and then have them a chance to meet you when you were just starting out. It's like, I thought that would be so fun, but
And
I
it's
didn't
funny
get to
because I
meet.
think a lot of parents do that to encourage their kids to read
Yeah.
more. Because what I noticed with meeting R.L. Stine was it's particularly the kid who was standing in front of me. Like at first, I was kind of like, get this kid out of the line because he's not a true fan. But right, exactly, that was my first reaction. But then I was like, no, 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 no. The mom is probably doing this for a reason,
Right.
because like you could tell, like the kid went up and he asked R.L. Stine what R.L. Stine's favorite book is that he wrote, and R.L.
Yeah.
Stine was like, I love Goosebumps, The Haunted Mask. And,
Okay.
R.L. Stine was like, he was giving the little child a little summary, like, the one with Carly Beth and she gets the mask stuck on her face and blah, 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 blah. And this kid had no idea what the Haunted Mask was or who Carly Beth was. And he literally looks at R.L. Stine. He goes, oh, that's cool. I haven't read that one. And then he asked the lady who worked at the bookstore if they had it at the bookstore. And I was just like, this kid has no idea who he's meeting right now. Like, no idea.
I'm so embarrassed for him.
Right. But I was like, no, I guarantee his mom's doing it because she wants to encourage him to
Yeah.
read. And like by being like, this is a famous author, this is his book. Like,
Right.
I think it's a good thing to do. I think it's encouraging.
Yeah, and I know my daughter right now is obsessed with reading Goosebumps, and all she wants to do is watch that new Goosebumps show. And it's like, I haven't let her yet. Not sure if I'm going to, but
Yeah. It's a little bit more I watched the first like 2 episodes. It's a little bit more mature. I think they kind of did. It's less mature than the Fear Street show. I don't know if you watched the Fear Street show on Netflix. Well, movies. They were movies.
Oh yeah, no, I haven't watched those yet.
Okay, so Goosebumps, the new Goosebumps show, I would say is for like the kids from like the mid 2000s who got into Goosebumps, because it's more mature than like OG Goosebumps that we remember.
Right.
Like the 90s show with like the terrible haircuts and stuff.
Dude, Hayden Christensen was in that.
Hayden Christensen and Ryan Gosling is in episodes of Goosebumps.
Yeah.
So
I flipped out when I saw it. I was like, God.
Yes, he's in Night of the Living Dummy 3. and Ryan Gosling is in Say Cheese and Die.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's right.
So
Yeah.
yes. So that's fun.
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's a little bit more mature than that. So
Yeah.
maybe hold off on it.
Yeah. I mean, we watched all of the original Goosebumps, and she handled those with no problem. And it's just like, yeah. And then we watched the movies,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, yeah, but I still I got a different vibe from that first episode, half episode I watched.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt darker, and that
Yeah.
I don't think she's ready for yet.
Yeah. It's now uh when I worked at the school, I introduced all of our kids to Goosebumps.
Mhm.
Some of the parents were like cool with it. Other parents were like, no. But I also introduced some of them who were like more ready for a little bit scarier.
Yeah.
The show The Haunting Hour. It's R.L. Stein's The Haunting Hour.
Okay.
A little bit scarier than Goosebumps, but still mild.
Yeah.
Um, but they loved it. They ate that show up. So definitely, if she's like ready for that next level of scares, try out The Haunting Hour.
Yeah. I'll give it a whirl. So you also said you're interested in writing middle grade books.
Yeah, so I'm in the middle of finishing up my first middle grade book. It'll be more Goosebumps vibe. I say this is noir is inspired by Goosebumps. Inspired by Fear Street and the point horror books from like the 80s and 90s, but it is a little bit scarier, a little bit darker, just because while I love Goosebumps and while I love Fear Street, there were moments in those books that were like, this is really campy.
Yeah.
Like there were just some moments. And so when I was a teen or like a young teen, middle grade kid, I wanted something that was going to keep me up at night. And the Goosebumps books didn't quite do that.
Yeah.
I mean, Welcome to Dead House was a little bit spooky, but
Yeah.
that one was a little creepy. But I wanted something a little bit scarier because I loved the whole like, ooh, you know,
Yeah.
it's so creepy. Like I can't sleep. I loved that as a kid, and so the This Is Noir series is scarier than those books. But still for ages, I would say, depending on how cool you are with scares, I would say 13 and up or 14 and up. And they're good for adults who actually a lot of my readers are adults, because they're good for adults who love horror but don't. There's a lot of like grotesque horror out there right now, a lot of like gore for the
Splatterpunk.
sake of gore. Splatterpunk is super weirdly popular right now. And not to diss anyone's reading choices or whatever. You read what you want to read. But I do know that, for adults that don't like that stuff, they need that like middle ground sort of thing. So my books are also fun for adults too.
Yeah.
But my middle grade series is going to be I don't have like a cover or anything done for it because it's very last minute because I'm trying to get it published next month. So like literally, my editor's a rock star because I'm going to get her the manuscript tonight and send it to her. And she said she'll get it done in like 1 to 3 days, and then we'll get the ball rolling.
Okay.
But it's a spin-off series of my This Is Noir series called Welcome to Noir. And it's basically a group of kids who solve mysteries in their weird town of Noir.
Yeah.
So it's not where the young adult series is like the states are specified or whatever. This one is just just Nor. You just know that you're in Nor. They're never going to specify like where Nor is, just that it's a city that they live in. And it's going to be the same kids in each story. Whereas the young adult series, each book is standalone. And none of the characters are the same. The characters don't even know each other. They don't know each other exist. This book, it'll be their friends. The stories will be standalone stories, but it'll be the same characters for each story. And I'll drop the title here, which I haven't dropped on like any of my socials or anything yet. But
heard it here first.
Right, heard it here first. So the first book in the series is going to be called Revenge of the Mall Santa.
Revenge of the Mall Santa.
So yeah, there'll be it'll be more mystery based. Some of the stories will be a little creepy still, little jump scares here and there for kids, but it'll be more mystery based, just for younger kids.
And that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, nice. I dig it. All right. So I had a comment over here. Where was it? Okay. So what was it that got you into wanting to write horror over other genres?
I was a creepy, weird kid. not like so much, but I don't know. I always loved getting scared as a kid. And I would like to thank my parents for that too, because a lot of it comes from them. Not that they scared me on purpose or anything, but my dad, like growing up, my dad was the type of dad that if there was a movie on TV that he wanted to watch, like a scary movie,
yeah,
and my mom wasn't home, it was never, okay, you guys, you got to go in the other room because I want to watch this movie. It was, okay, you guys, don't tell your mom I let you watch this movie. And so like growing up, I was this like 6-year-old kid who's watching, you know, Predator and Halloween and Friday the 13th and like all these scary movies, Jaws, whatever.
Yeah.
And that kind of just like, I liked it. It was, one, it was a bonding experience with my dad, and two, it was like I liked getting creeped out. I thought it was fun. I liked scary stories. And then I started reading, you know, Goosebumps, and well, I didn't start reading Goosebumps first. My mom, like, Goosebumps was on Fox, like, Family, growing up, and it was always on at lunchtime. So my mom would bring a blanket into the living room, and she'd lay the blanket out, and then we'd lay our lunch out on the blanket, and me and my sister and my mom would sit on this blanket in the living room and eat our lunch while watching Goosebumps. And it was just like our daily routine. And like, again, another bonding experience, you know, with my mom. And so it's just like, I don't know. I loved it. I loved getting creeped out, and I loved how my parents like kind of nurtured that. Like they were just kind of like, let her be weird. It's fine.
Well, yeah.
Right. And I liked that. And so then I read Goosebumps, loved Goosebumps. And that's kind of where it all started. Was I loved being creeped out, so I wanted to turn that around and creep out the next generation.
Right.
It just, I feel like it's passing the torch sort of thing. Like, if kids, like, it's one thing to see someone like R.L. Stine, and like he's famous, right? He's blown up. He's one of the lucky ones, you know, who's made a huge career out of writing books. But I think it's also inspiring to see people like indie authors who we don't have that exposure like R.L. Stine. So I feel like it's easier for us to inspire kids just because, you know, we're persevering, we're really pushing, you know, we're doing our best to get our books out there and spread the word and market for ourselves, and taking time to spend with kids to, you know, encourage kids and show kids like, you can do this too. Like, it's so easy to, well, it's it's easy and fun to sit down and write these stories and like, you know, really nurture your imagination and put it on paper. And so that's another reason, like, I love doing this, and I love writing horror for the next generation of weirdo kids who's, you know.
Yeah, I hear that. I get it. And I encourage my kids too. It's like, it's okay to be weird.
Right.
You can be weird.
It is. It's okay to be into, you know, the weird, creepy things that some people normally wouldn't be into.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a feeling that one of my daughters is going to be very princessy type, and the other is going to be like you, where she's like got the creepy vibe going on and telling stories and stuff like that. So it's like, I get that.
I used to be the friend that the parents would talk to my mom before I'd go spend the night at their kid's house and be like, "Can you please tell Audra not to tell any scary stories before she comes over? Like, just let her know we can't be doing that." And I would just be like, "All right, okay." Like, dude, it killed me the one time I was like 8 and I was going to spend the night at my friend's house, and they just moved into a new house, and it just so happened that their new house was right next door to a cemetery.
Oh.
And it killed me as a child to be told that I could not go to my friend's house and tell scary stories. I was like, but she lives right next to a cemetery. Like, the story's writing itself, Mom. Like, but yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, who knew? Because my daughter was just saying today, it's just like, oh, we need to come here at 3 a.m. and see if there's any ghosts and stuff going on. It's just like, yeah,
Me.
okay.
That was me for sure growing up. Like, I still watch like ghost hunters and stuff like that. Now, would you ever get me to go ghost hunting? Probably not, because while I talk up this big talk and I love getting scared, I don't actually want to see a ghost. That's going to be a no from me.
It's overrated. I've been on a ghost hunt, so it's definitely overrated.
Yeah,
it happens. Well, I think it also depends on who you go with.
Probably.
I don't know. I'm not a professional ghost hunter.
Right. Same.
But I mean, I have a friend who was on a horror show in Netflix, and what? Hello, authors. I'm currently running some book promotion now. Send your book link and let's get sales together. Okay. Anyway, forget what I was going to say. Totally derailed my thought. Anyway, I'm sure it'll come back up in a minute, but
I think the other thing too that like really pushed me in the horror direction as well over any of the other genres was I'm a Christian, and growing up a Christian, there's always been this like misconception, I guess, that like you're not supposed to do anything scary. Don't get involved in anything scary. Stay away from it, blah, blah, blah. It's
do
evil.
not tempt the Lord thy God. Have you heard that one before?
Right, exactly. And it's one of those things where it's like, yes, I do believe there is a line that you do have to draw. Okay. However, my thought process was, wait a second. The Bible is like one of the scariest books out there. Like, it's got everything. It's got ghosts, it's got demons, it's got possession. Like, it's got the whole package. It's got killing, everything else. And so it was just one of those things where it was like, I get it, but at the same time, like, to me, these things still happen. Like darkness still exists in the world in
Right.
one, whether it's fictional darkness or like whatever, in one way, shape, or form, it's still there. It exists in the world, and you're always going to have the battle of like dark and light. You know, you see it in movies, you know, Star Wars and Marvel and everything else, and it's one of those things where it's like that's all horror really is. You know, it's just another battle of dark and light and who's going to win and everything else. So like I never understood that concept, so it's kind of like I wanted to kind of just like show people like that have always told me like you shouldn't be writing that or whatever, like no, you're wrong. Like it's darkness, it's, you know, the dark versus the light. Like there is always going to be, in my stories, there's always going to be a lighter ending. It might not be the ending that everyone wants, you know, because obviously in these kids in the story, they go through a lot. Dean goes through a lot to get to his ending. But he still gets to the ending and things are okay. They're going to be okay. Not the same, but they're going to be okay. And same thing with Alligator Skin. Like a lot happens, a lot takes place, and you know, Jensen goes through a lot in just a short span of time, and she faces some really creepy things, some dark things, and like things she can't explain. But in the end of the book, like everything's going to be okay. She's not the same, her friends aren't the same, but you know, things came out for the better. They happened the way they were supposed to, and it's going to be okay. Like you can get through it. Through the darkness, there is an ending of some sort. So that was like another reason too.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I guess I'm guilty of that too a little bit. I know I tend to write with a happier ending and stuff like that, or at least an ending that's satisfying for me anyway. But yeah, so I get that.
Right. Some of my short stories aren't like that. Some of them can be depressing. But again, they're not for children.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, I don't know, depression is part of life.
Yeah.
I think so. It's yeah, I don't know. It is what it is.
Right.
Everyone has their battles.
And that's another thing with horror too that I really appreciate about the genre is I think horror is as close, no matter how extreme or crazy it gets in the story, whether it's ghosts or demons or monsters or whatever. I think horror is as close to like real life as you're gonna get, just because of all the horrors that you go through your life like daily. And like so many of the monsters in stories are just like fictionalized, you know, personal demons or fictionalized battles that you've gone through, that you've turned into monsters. And so like I think that's one of those things that like I just really appreciate about horror. Like even some horror authors, like when you read like their acknowledgments and stuff like that, like you see where their inspiration for, you know, a grotesque monster came from or whatever. And it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, I don't want to keep you too long. Do you have any other announcements or things that you want to talk about coming up? Any events or?
So events, I'll actually be in Tiffin on the 25th at Penn Yan Bookstore for a book signing. There will be like, I think there's going to be 7 of us authors there. We'll be there signing and selling our books for Small Business Saturday.
Okay.
And then I'll be at the Orville Library for their like book fair in March.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's what I have coming up so far. My
obviously
busy season was in October.
Right. Obviously, stay tuned to her Instagram. Let's get literature.
Yes.
And yeah, because that's where you'll probably have most of your updates.
That's where all of my updates are going to be. And then I also did have, I was part of a children's anthology as well.
Yeah.
That my aunt illustrated some pictures for it. She did some pictures of my dogs because the stories are about my dogs.
Yeah.
And that one's called Tales of Minnie Book 2. It just came out November 10th. It was published through 20 Hills Publishing. But you should also give them a follow on Instagram as well. I intern for them, and it's awesome working there. I love it. I love it. They're fantastic. But yeah, so that one just came out, and it's great for kids, pretty much of all ages, like little kids all the way up to like middle grade kids. There's some middle grade stories in there as well. So yeah, one makes a great Christmas present.
Right. Hint, hint.
And it does, yeah. A couple of the illustrators in that book too are, I think one was 14 and one was 15, which is very impressive. Again, more inspiring people. So
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the talent is just always keeps going up every time you turn around. Because like my kids are on their phones doing all kinds of editing and stuff like that, and it's just like, you edited this video? You have more patience than me. Like, are you kidding?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, all right, but anyway, it's been a pleasure talking to you tonight, and I really appreciate your time. And obviously, we're going to look forward to everything you have coming up in the future.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. You're always welcome to come back and talk movies with us when we have our movie talk. I mean, we're probably going to talk Ahsoka and stuff at some point, but
listen, if you ever do a Twilight movie talk, Twilight Saga, I am there.
Oh, yeah, right. All right. Well, again, until next time, have a good one, everybody.